Cabezazos y Pendejadas Podcast.
David, how you doing, man? This past Saturday night here at this big fishing pond, Bud caught himself a big fish, and he taught all of us that big fish can't get caught by stopping Spence in the 9th round.
Earl told us the truth from the very beginning. He did say this fight was going to be a one-sided ass whooping, but Crawford was the one doing the whooping. Mark, you were on the scene Saturday. You were live and in Vegas. You were in the house. Can you tell us, how was your experience, man? How was the fight atmosphere?
You know what, Dave? When I first got here, there was very few people. It was only, I would want, by percentages, I would say it was probably about 30% full when I got here. Once Nonito started, a lot more people came in, so it looked at about 45%, not quite 50% full, but all the people that were in there were pretty much boxing heads. So I had a good experience, man. It's really fun when you're out there and you meet people who are boxing heads. They're really into it. And it stayed like that even through the Pitbull fight. I would say when Pitbull started, it did get anywhere from 60 to 70% full. But as soon as the main event started, it completely got jam-packed. I mean, everybody was there. And once they came in, it was a dominant Bud crowd. A lot of money was on Bud. I'm sure the casinos took a hit on Bud. You're not going to beat them. But for the fight, a lot of people bet on the knockout. And I'm sure for the fight, the casinos did lose.
Now, Mark, we gotta own up to it, bro. You and I called this one way wrong. We thought Spence was going to win this fight. Crawford ended up dominating. Spence didn't have a prayer. Hey, it's not my first or my last, right? We've been there, done that, man. We've been wrong before. I did not expect this kind of domination from Crawford. I looked at Spence that night. I did not recognize Spence. He looked flat, and I don't want to create excuses because Bud looked amazing, man. But to be honest with you, I don't think it mattered if Earl was at his best or not, because if Earl was 100%, I still think he would have lost. So I want to ask you this, Mark. What do you think is next for Bud? I think he's got a lot of options going forward.
I don't know, man, what's next for Bud. I mean, me and you were throwing out names like Zoo. I threw out Boots in this, but we both know that's not going to happen because Boots isn't going to move from welterweight, and we all know Bud's going to move over to 154. Charlo has a big fight with Canelo, but even if he loses, he really doesn't lose much because he moved up 2 divisions, and he'd come back down
and still have his belts.
And still have his belts and defend them against, Bud, and that would be a very big fight as well. But for right now, I think he's going to pick the best fights, the biggest money fights, because he doesn't have anything to prove to anybody. I don't think we're going to see a Zoo because that's not going to bring in as much money. I think right now he's going to pick, I don't even think Canelo is out of the option. He probably could meet him at a catch weight, or he would say 168, fight him at 160, and I bet he could take him. I mean, the way he looked on Saturday night, I don't think there's a lot of people that would disagree with me that he could probably take Canelo. And you have the rematch.
I don't want to see a rematch. I don't think there should be one. Spence looked totally outclassed. I actually don't even know if Spence should continue fighting. I know you told me Spence did activate his rematch clause. Is that correct?
He activated it yesterday. I saw that on Blue Blood Sports. So, Dave, man, we're Tejanos, man. And one thing about Tejanos, we're prideful. And we got a lot of pride. And
that's pride fucking with you.
Spence is a Tejano, man. And, Spence activated that rematch clause yesterday morning immediately. He's a Tejano. He's got pride.
Fuck pride.
He wants his get back. He's hoping it's going to happen.
So Spence wants the rematch. Here's the problem. I don't think anybody's going to be willing to do that again. That's going to be a hard sell to the boxing public. I'll tell you this much. I don't want to see it. I would rather see Spence take on a different opponent. If he wants to continue his career, I want to see him against somebody else at 154, possibly somebody that we don't have to shell out a pay-per-view for, if possible, just to see if he still has it. Because I hear you say Tim Tszyu is not an option. I disagree. I think something needs to happen with Tszyu, because Tszyu is the mandatory for the WBO. If Jermell doesn't fight Tszyu, he doesn't have all the belts. that's not an undisputed fight at 154 for Crawford. It kind of ruins the mystique for that fight. In order to get Zoo out of the picture, I think Crawford moves up to face Zoo for the right to face Jermell. And maybe they throw some money at him to sweeten the pot. If Crawford can get rid of Zoo, that makes the Jermell fight, regardless of what happens in September with Canelo, possible. So Zoo is not out of the picture until someone takes him out of the picture. And I think that's going to be Crawford's job at 154 if he decides to move up. Going to the Canelo comment, and I think it depends on the weight. If Bud fights Canelo at 168, I got to give Canelo the advantage, man. I don't know. I don't know
that's
how.
Why I think that's why I think it may go that way, because Canelo's pretty calculated in who he picks. And he always picks champions. And if he beats Crawford, I don't think anybody will care. But he knows, and a lot of boxing insiders know, and boxing heads know, he's got a major advantage. But the regular boxing fan just thinks Crawford is Superman right now.
I do got to say this, though. Bud is not a small welterweight, man. He looked like a 154-pounder in that ring, and I bet he was as strong as a middleweight in that ring. He was pushing Spence around like I'd never seen Spence pushed around.
I've always thought he's a little shorter. He's a little guy. He always looked like that to me. But looking at him live inside the ring with another welterweight the size of Spence, that they did not look. Bud looked actually bigger at some points. He's not a small man. I mean, once you see them side to side live inside the ring, it's a different experience. And another thing that's very, very different, being there and being at that fight live and watching it on TV is very different. It was a lot more vicious live. I was on the second level, and if anybody goes to a boxing match, don't pay thousands and thousands of dollars to be down there. I've been down there, and I've been up where I was. And let me tell you, get on that second level, the sections 200 to 213, try to get that first row, row A, and it's like you're on a balcony over the ring. So your view is beautiful. I was on the very first row in section 213.
And you could see over the ropes, right?
Oh, yeah, you could see it all. You could see the whole thing. You can, see it on that live that I showed. There was nobody in front of me. It's a long hike down and a long hike up at a very steep side. But if you're a boxing head and you just want to appreciate a fight and have a bird's eye view and a better view than those $5,000 seats down there, that's the place to be.
Mark, during the live, I heard the oohs and the ahs of the crowd. I could hear the crowd every time Bud landed a shot. It reminded me of the time we saw Margarito versus Mosley in California. We did sit on the floor for that one. Man, you could hear Shane's shots on Margarito. He was bombing on Margarito that night. And you're right. The fight is more vicious in person than you realize on the screen. So
it is. But just being there live is so different. I promise you, it looked worse live. It really did. Well, I mean, I was literally worried. I was worried for the man. He looked bad. He looked very bad. The guy next to me was talking to me, and I've never seen Spence handled like that. And the guy next to me told me he looked sleepy, or he looked maybe just lethargic on the big screen before the fight. Maybe he just wasn't there. In football, sometimes they say you come out flat. Maybe he was flat. Maybe something was wrong with him. I don't know. In the Spence crowd, people were feeling a little bit like, man, something's wrong with him, and concerned because of how bad he looked in there and how vicious the blows were. So there was concern on the Spence crowd and for Spence, but the Crawford ruckus was loud. There was a lot of money on him, but that was pretty much the feel of the fight.
Well, Mark, that's saying something, because on the screen it looked bad too. The man's been through a lot. He's proven a lot, but I for one, as a concerned Spence fan, I'd like to see him hang him up. If he wants to continue his career, I'd like to see him against a top 10 opponent at 154 pounds, see how he looks versus that opponent. That will give us a barometer as to whether, hey, he's back. Yes, it was a weight issue, or it was an off night. Mark, we also had Nonito Donaire on the card. Bittersweet viewing for you and me, I believe.
And we had a legend in the house. And look, when he fought, everybody that was there to see Nonito. Those were true boxing heads. That's why I said earlier, man, there was a lot of boxing heads and it was fun to be there. But everybody there cheered him on the whole way. There was only about a 45, maybe 40% capacity. It sounded really loud. I mean, they gave it all they had to yell for Nonito. There was a lot of locals, a lot of local boxing heads from Vegas there because he lives here in Vegas now. So everybody in the building was expecting him to give a retirement speech. And, you know, there everybody was like, oh, yeah, he's going to do it. For sure, he's going to do the speech. And he didn't say a word. He didn't say it.
He hinted towards it. They asked him if he was going to continue. Yeah. He said he felt good, but he couldn't pull the trigger. Mark, those are buzzwords for you and I. We've heard many fighters say that over the years, and that pretty much means their body doesn't respond when they want their body to respond. That's a sign of it's time to hang him up. Nonito probably knows it. He's probably waiting to see, hey, do I take a farewell fight and officially announce my retire? Because a competitor like Nonito doesn't want to go out on a loss. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be contemplating whether he wants to seriously continue to compete or hang him up. Mark, we also had Pitbull Cruz. We didn't talk a lot about his fight against Giovanni Cabrera, kid out of Chicago. What can you tell us about that fight?
You know what? The kid from Chicago surprised everybody in the arena. I was texting with you, so I had the ability to find out what TV was saying. Comparing, I was sitting next to this couple, this older couple, and they were saying they hadn't been to a boxing match since the 70s, and they said that kid reminded them of a style of Muhammad Ali, just because the way I'm not saying he is Muhammad Ali, but the way him and Pitbull fought together, it gave a lot of people there a feel of Ali, Frazier. But the crowd was really cheering on the Chicago kid because, you know, he was the younger underdog, but he was putting out a lot of punches, and I saw the same thing. He was putting out a lot of punches. He was doing all the early work. Pitbull was hitting them pretty hard and pretty consistently with that big round right that he throws. But that
he wasn't throwing enough.
That was few and far between. Yeah. So the kid was throwing a lot. You texted me at one point, said TV had it 5-1. I was surprised, 5-1 for Cruz, and everybody around me was shocked when I was telling him that. You know, as the fight progressed, he did kind of slow down a little bit because the bombs were wearing on him. You could see that the bombs were hard, but there were very few of them. But he was hanging on, and most of the crowd just felt he just needed to hang on to win. And I thought so, but it was a landslide the other way. You know, but that's just, I guess, the way boxing goes right now.
Yeah, it's been a kind of weird year for judging. Definitely, Mark. I do want to say Pitbull didn't look impressive to me in that fight. I think he's been spending too much time chasing Gervonta Davis. That's his holy grail. He wants that rematch so bad. He's kind of wasting his career away, taking these low-level fights and fighting on pay-per-view undercards and ignoring his career, not trying to advance it. He needs to fight better opponents and create a demand for Tank Davis because everybody's tired. I know I'm tired of hearing him clamor for that fight. Cruz is kind of just resting on that one tough fight he gave Gervonta, and he hasn't done anything since. I don't care to see him in a fight, especially after what happened with Cabrera. I thought, just like you, Cabrera was doing more than they were giving him credit for. Sure, his punches were pity-pat, but he was landing, and he was making Pitbull miss.
The question around the arena was that Cabrera's fight of his life, or was that a hell of a Freddie Roach job?
You know, Cabrera has that quirky style. I looked at some of the footage on him on YouTube, and that's the way he fights. He hasn't been with Freddie too long, I don't think, but he does have this style where he walks around you and he turns, he'll pivot, and, you know, he's just throwing these arm punches. That's why he has a high work rate, because he's not really exerting himself. I'd like to see him tighten up his defense. He fought with his hands down a lot.
The whole time. That's why they were comparing him to Ali. I was like, there's only one Ali.
Yeah, and he's not Ali, man. Even though he's pretty slick at times, I think he was getting caught because he was being careless with his defense. If Cabrera is going to move on to the upper echelon of opponents, he needs to start keeping his hands up.
He definitely needs to tighten up that defense.
Oh, for sure, man. Well, Mark, it was a good weekend of boxing. Bud shocked the world. I know I'm still kind of stunned from what happened on Saturday again. I'll take full. I'll eat my big plate of crow. I really thought Spence was going to do better than he did, but we have a new star in boxing, guys. For those who were trying to say Bud's not a star, he's a star now.
You know what? And nobody was disappointed, man. Everybody in the arena was pleased. I mean, great. We saw a one-sided fight that wasn't boring, and the people loved it.
So, Mark, that was going to be another question I wanted to ask. Did it feel like people got their money's worth?
Yes, because you always had that feeling that Spence may knock this guy out. When you could hear the punch on the padding when he was blocking him, even when he blocked that very last one on TV, it shows it very clearly. He's way ahead of him. He knows what he's going to do. He's going to throw a haymaker. He just puts it there. It looks like almost a second before, and then he blocks it. You could hear the thud of that block. If that thing landed, he would have been out. And that's what kept the people into it, because every block, and he was masterful with his blocks. You could hear the thud of the power of Spence's punch, because he knew he needed a knockout, and you could hear it. And that was the anticipation. Like, this guy can get him at any minute. Everybody would look at each other every time he hit him and he blocked it. They were like, ooh, if that would have, if he catches him with one of those. And,
it's over.
But yeah, and that was the anticipation, and that anticipation stayed even until he hit him with that last thud. There was and then whoa when he knocked him out. All in all, it was a good event.
Again, brother, I wish I was out there with you, but we'll have to meet up on the next one.
Man, we got like a lot of people from all over the world here this weekend, because there's a big event in soccer. I'm not a big soccer guy, but I do know who Manchester United is, and I do know who Barcelona is, and they've been here over the weekend, and it's like a huge thing. But over the weekend, nothing was more talked about than the boxing match.
Yep, dominated the event. I'm pretty sure it was a successful event overall. I'm real interested to hear how well it did on pay-per-view. I know it was a full house in the building. It looked like a full house by the time the main event started. That's everything for the day, though, Mark. It was be real interesting to see where boxing goes from here with everybody involved on the card. I guess that's it, buddy. We'll have to sign out.
That's it, man. We'll see you guys. I'm going to have to go try to make some of this Spence Crawford ticket money up. I'm already down close to a G.
You going to the slots?
No, it looks like I'm going to have to resort to the slots. I've been at the craps tables and at the blackjack tables, and I don't, when they, I like the blackjack tables when it doesn't make me make decisions. Get those 19s and get those face cards and those blackjacks, I'm happy. As soon as I get a 15 or a 14 or a 12, I got to start counting. It gets all bad.
Go back to craps, baby. 6 and 8, 6 and 8.
I did do well on the craps. I did do well, but I want to be good at blackjack, and it just, I'm that guy at the table. Everybody just looks at really pissed off, man. And
you're fucking up the table.
I don't know what the thing is, but they just always look at me like it's all my fault. Yeah. So I leave there after losing a bundle and everybody else's money, and then go kind of recoup at the craps, come back and try to give it another go and lose more people's money. But we'll see how it goes tonight, man.
Karma's a bitch, man. Anyway, Mark, we'll catch you on the next one, brother. You stay safe out there and stop losing money, man.
All right, we'll see you, bud.
Órale.